Everybody has always been asking a question about reboots. Apparently, this seems to be the year of reboots. You know? Especially when it comes to comic books. But, you know, comic books aren't the only thing that are getting rebooted, folks. Nope. Just recently, last night, the official reboot, or soft reboot, of TNA's Impact occurred. Now, everybody has looked at the picture of the Impact Zone, or the Impact Wrestling Zone, and everybody that saw Impact last night, what they saw, basically, according to many, was a cross between SmackDown when it first started and Thunder. Me, mostly, I think I saw nothing but Thunder. But honestly, that is what's known as a soft reboot, to get people interested once again in the product. Because you're now trying to focus more on the wrestling aspect instead of majority of promos and backstage stuff and whatever. But again, that's not the only thing that's been rebooted this year. A lot of things have occurred. Marvel Comics recently did a soft reboot, if you will, on the Fantastic Four, calling them the Future Foundation now. Okay. Now, there have been other soft reboots as well. The Hub Channel recently did, in the past year or so, this past year, last year, and in this year, have done soft reboots of My Little Pony, Transformers with Transformers Prime, G.I. Joe with G.I. Joe Renegades, and the list could go on. You see, folks, there's even word going around that the next Ninja Turtles movie is going to be a reboot. Basically a retelling again of how things happened. Now, there is a difference between a complete reboot and a soft reboot. A complete reboot is basically doing it all over again, starting from square one and just working your way back up. Now, a soft reboot is basically what's known as altering certain things and changing things. There have been certain events in comic books, folks, that have done this. Marvel Comics and DC have had all of this happen in various comic book events that have spanned many issues. Now, many people know about these events. They know the names of these events. In fact, it even happened recently, 2 years ago almost, in the 25th anniversary movie for TMNT, if you will. Now, some will say that everything kind of went back to the way it was with a few alterations. Now, recently, many of us know that a certain comic book from a certain publication recently released its 225th anniversary issue. Now, a lot of people looked at this whole situation, and even before then, as being similar to the events that Marvel Comics and DC Comics have done. Now, why would they say that, folks? Well, it's real simple. According to the head writer in a recent interview, he said that this situation right now, in the story arc that we'll be following during the summer, which is a summer story arc, if you will, is going to be acting as a soft reboot. So in other words, the story arc that will occur will be acting sort of as a reboot, to reintroduce everybody. Now, he's even gone on record as to saying that after this event, that in October, things will go back to the way they were. They will go back to where they left off. Now, he has gone on to say that a character will have their life hanging in the balance or will die. Now, we're not sure exactly what is going to happen to said character after the event of the summer event is all said and done. Some have their doubts. Some truly hope and believe that said character will be gone. But again, some have their doubts. Some, don't like the idea of said character being gone, and have vowed to drop said book if it happens. Now, some others, like myself, would be upset and sad if said character was gone, but we wouldn't drop the book, because we would realize that said character would still be alive in other mediums. Now, some may not accept the fact that said character is alive in other mediums because they may not have access to some mediums. Well, folks, for those of you that wouldn't have access to said mediums with said character in them, there are things called torrents and downloads and bootlegs and stuff like that. Anyway, said writer has gone on record just recently, I guess in the past 24 hours, and I guess to kind of stir up the pot some more, he said that what happens is said character was unsuitable for small children and people with weak constitutions. Okay. We all know that when a writer says something like that they're just trying to fool possibly the newer readers and the newer followers. They probably realize that they cannot fool long-time readers and followers, but pray and hope that those long-time readers and followers that know what they're truly probably going to do don't open their mouth or say anything. Well, believe me, a certain head writer is going to be bombarded at a certain summer convention this year with so many questions. He will be bombarded possibly by countless emails and calls from a certain resident of said fan base, maybe even meeting them face to face, to the point that said head writer may have no choice but to confide in somebody that he would hope would keep it a secret about what's really going to happen. But you see, that's just the thing about a head writer when it comes to doing a reboot or a soft reboot or an acting soft reboot. They won't confide in anybody, not even those they work with. Because if they coincide with those they work with, they're afraid the word of mouth is going to get out. Now, again, we don't know what will happen after this soft reboot occurs and everything goes back to the status quo in some way. Said head writer said that seeing who comes back and how is all part of the surprise. Now, being a long-time reader of said comic book, I can pretty much say that I really don't know what could happen. But perhaps I do. And perhaps others that have been long-time readers like myself have a good idea as well. But you see, the reason I said head writer, says the things that they do, like what they did recently in the past 24 hours by saying what happened to said character is unsuitable for small children and those with weak constitutions, that is to try to throw a wrench into the plans. Try to throw a wrench, a curveball, a red herring, if you will, to get people off of their case. But when we take a look at it, and said head writer comes out and says that they visit every message board out there that is dedicated to said character and said franchise and said comic book, and sees what everybody is talking about, as well as goes to places like DeviantArt, which they have an account at, and sees certain groups and clubs in which said character, you know, is the main focus, along with another character or a few other characters, then they kind of get the idea that some may not be in favor of what they may do. Now, other fans have come out and have said that said character that right now is the main focus and talk of everybody is almost like a Gwen Stacy, according to one person. Or said character's possible death could be like Gwen Stacy's, to be corrected. To correct myself there. Now, I replied on this at one of the message boards. I said, true, Gwen Stacy is indeed dead. Gwen Stacy is indeed dead. There's no doubt about it. Gwen Stacy is indeed dead. There's no doubt about it. But we have seen her alive in other mediums. We've seen her alive in the Spectacular Spider-Man. We've seen her alive in Spider-Man 3. We even saw her alive in the finale to the 1990s Spider-Man. In another reality, that is. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I responded, like I said, to one of those posters when they said that. And I said basically what I had heard on the DVD interview that Stan Lee did with Kevin Smith. He said he had no idea Gwen Stacy was going to die. And he didn't find out till he came back from vacation, although he may have given the okay, but he just couldn't remember. So you see, in other words, what that tells me, folks, is if Stan Lee would have known that Gwen Stacy was going to be killed off, had he known it, he wouldn't have allowed it. But he has stayed true to his word that in the comic books, she is indeed dead. In the main comic, that is. Now, a lot of people will compare said character to Gwen because of that. Okay, that's true. That might be a good comparison, but we don't know yet. You see, even certain titles from Marvel and DC, major titles that have been around for a long time, like I mentioned, Fantastic Four, have gone through these reboots, soft reboots, if you will. Spider-Man has gone through a soft reboot. X-Men have gone through soft reboots. Over at the DC side, Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, Wonder Woman. The list goes on there of people that have gone through, of characters and comics that have gone through soft reboots. Even the two major events that are similar to what's happening in said comic book from said publication as we speak have been nothing more than soft reboots. And you see, the reason for soft reboots, folks, isn't to arouse the ire of certain fans that don't want certain things to happen to their favorite characters or favorite character. But it's basically, according to many writers, and according to this head writer, to tie up loose ends and plot holes and basically make one single continuity to work with. The only problem about that sometimes is there's so many to tie up. You're basically saying that what you're doing is taking everything that you worked with and a majority of it you're tossing out. Now, some former head writers will say that the reason a certain event like this is happening is that said comic book company can avoid any existence of them that they had with said comic book company. In other words, they could basically erase a majority of what said former head writer that says said event is happening because they don't want to acknowledge what they've done, right? So that they can just move on. The truth is, folks, whether a former head writer would say that or not, and whether that has anything to do with said summer event is another story in itself. But I can say this: complete reboots, or soft reboots, or acting soft reboots, as if this one's being described, is basically the writer's way of trying to tie up loose ends and make one single continuity to work with. Now, some will say that's impossible to do. I've already gone on record and said that said villain that's doing this is causing this soft reboot, if you will, for the summer event. I've already gone on record and said that I believe said villain is going to end up heading back to Insaneville, Nutsville, put him in a straitjacketville. That's what I feel is going to happen. But again, I don't know. We'll just have to wait and find out. But I will say this. What occurs in said summer event from said publication starting next month, it will get people talking. And if it has anything to do with the 225th anniversary issue and the one that comes after in October, we will find out. And that, my friends, is all I have to say about the whole soft reboot and reboots deal here on YouTube. If you got any comments, you know what to do. Down below, please. I'll talk to y'all later.